Welcome to Santaroga Surplus. This is the second video describing the actual production or gunsmithing of the AR Straightpull pistol. This one chambered in 300 blackout. Magazine's empty. Clear. Once again, this is from a Knox Stocks breacher pistol grip for a shotgun. I did have to make a couple of modifications to it in order to make it work. It had a castle nut on it that was epoxied in place, so I had to break that free. And I also had to go ahead and file down. I just chucked it in a lathe and spun it. You could do the same thing in a drill press. And file down the outer edge of the threads because it was just a little bit oversized. So I got it into spec, it took about 5 minutes, and now it's on here. And it allows me to put a plate on so that I can have my spring and pin for the rear attachment. The rest of this is pretty simple. I'm going to get a lot of questions because I'm probably going to leave some things out. And I don't know what I'm leaving out. I don't know what your skill level is. This is a very easy project. If I was going to suggest a first-time gunsmithing project, this might be it. Let's pull in a little closer. In the previous video, I described and showed you some of the process of actually doing the work on the upper. We're going to get a little more in depth right now. First thing we're going to do is take the optic off so that we can play with things. This is a very cheap optic, and it's not really a big deal. I put it on for testing. I would probably suggest, if you're going to use it as a hunting pistol, that a 2x or a 2.5x magnified red dot would be really ideal. And I have one available that I'm probably going to test at the range. I may or may not do that on camera. I haven't filled the epoxy in all the way here yet. I did a little bit on the base layer. So I re-drilled my bolt handle to the back just to see if it would make a difference in how the angles of forces are going. This one operates a little bit rough, and it is strictly because of this upper. This upper is a no-name. I can't find the manufacturer anywhere. I ordered it from Blackthorn Products, and it's really cool in a lot of ways. I think that it's an ideal all-polymer upper for 22 builds, but it's a little bit loose for this. That being said, it still functions just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I did replace my bolt handle with this one, which is much lower profile. You can get your finger on it to manipulate it. It doesn't seem to matter whether it's here or here. It doesn't seem to make a real difference in how the gun functions. We'll break it down and take a look at the bolt. This started out as a standard barrel nut. I just chucked it into the lathe. You could use a drill press for this, and turned it, you could use a file, to smooth. And then I took a square file and I filed a notch in it so that you can use a standard barrel wrench. You can just finger tighten these, but I decided that I wanted a little bit more security, just for running around in the field. 300 blackout barrel. What I did to plug the gas port in the barrel is probably the most complicated part of this whole build. I tapped, because it's 300 blackout barrel, a number 632 tap worked fine. I tapped it, and then I put a set screw in, okay? And then I welded over the top. That's the complicated part because it requires a welder. You can probably do the same thing by reversing a gas block and threading a large set screw into the gas block. There's a lot of solutions to this, but the lower receiver does not require any modifications at all, okay? You could use this with a standard buffer tube if you wanted to, in which case you don't even have to cut your bolt carrier group at all. And I took the bolt hold open out because it was kind of interfering with my finger on the bolt. And I was thinking about sanding this down. I haven't yet. Doesn't seem to be a big deal. You don't have to mess with your lower. Everything is your upper. You're going to mill a slot. You're going to mill the slot before you drill any holes into the bolt carrier. Once you put a barrel on and you figure out where the bolt carrier stops, you can mark, I just use a Sharpie, paint Sharpie, and transferred marks. It's not that tight a deal. And figure out where you're going to be drilling your holes and starting your mill cut. Unscrew the bolt, drop your bolt carrier group out, and you're done. So, where we cut the bolt carrier is behind the lip with enough room for the hammer to get in there. I cut it as long as I could and still clear the magazine well without running past the rear of the receiver. It's a pretty easy one. I just flattened the gas key out. It didn't seem like a really big deal, but I went ahead and did it because I think it might smooth the travel a little bit. This you need for as rails to keep things from turning and going upside down. That's all there is to it. My first bolt handle hole was marked to be right behind the gas key hole here, or just in front of the forward hex nut. Okay? That's pretty good. You do want to disassemble your bolt first before you drill, otherwise you're going to drill into the actual bolt assembly or your firing pin. So take it all apart, drill it, tap it, number 1032, and then, or 1/4 by 28, whatever works for you. Okay, you don't need to be bigger than that. This is 1032 and it works just fine. So you can do the hole back here as well. If you do it back here, you're going to come further back on your upper receiver to clear your magazine well with the bolt all the way back. This is where I started. This is where I just transferred marks. I just made a mark here, put the bolt in, looked for my mark, put the mark right here, made a dot there, and drilled a hole, and then started milling that way. This is polymer, so you shouldn't have any problems milling on a drill press if you want to. And you could even use a 1/4 inch round file, rat tail file, and do the job that way. Lots of ways to do this. You don't need a lathe and a mill to do this. Once I had the slot cut, and I kind of guessed at how far back I was going to go, and I had to redo it once. Once your slot is done, you insert your barrel. Close your bolt. So you want to make sure it's all the way forward and closed. And then you'll take a center punch and you'll mark where you're going to drill your hole. Boom. And that'll be the forward spot on your bolt. If you're doing the tail end bolt hole, it'll be here. And this, you don't need to have this part milled out. Drill, tap, make sure your bolt's disassembled before you drill and tap. Make sure the inside is smoothed out. Get a screw, or make a screw, make a little bolt handle. And it's a really easy project. This is something you should absolutely make. This is one of those beginning gunsmithing projects where you should actually do something. Do some threading, get the 2-3 different diameters going on. This is a 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch here, 3/8 of an inch here, and then 0.195 to do the number 10 by 32 threads here. It's important to do little bits of work like that. That's all there is to it, really. It's a really good, simple design. There are some commercial considerations that you might want to look into doing if you want to do a more advanced build. One of them is the bolt handle. Should probably not be a screw-in. There should be some other way, more solid mechanism to hold it back that has to do with this assembly. You could do a straight pull on the rear by taking a charging handle and filling it so that there's no wiggle room and using a gas key. You could probably even do a top charging handle. There's options here. I would come up with a better barrel nut solution, something knurled and a little fatter so that you have better grip on it. You could lower the rail considerably if you're using a no gas key bolt. You could reduce the size of this, lower it a little bit, lower this down because you wouldn't need all the space in here. You certainly could leave it solid and not have a bunch of holes in your receiver. Lower receiver, I wouldn't change anything except possibly getting rid of some of the excess material here because it does interfere with bolt travel a little bit. Other commercial considerations, let's see, we've got barrel with no gas port drilled, so you can have different barrel lengths, different calibers. Speaking of different calibers, there's a couple calibers you can use that use the 5.56 bolt face, so you don't have to switch your bolt head out. You've got 300 blackout, 5.56, and the 357 AR or 357 rimless is actually coming back. Starline is now making brass for that, so that would be an acceptable one. These are your options. And that's really all there is to it. It's a very simple project. I thought people might want to know a little bit more about what went into this. If you'd like any more detail about specific aspects or measurements, go ahead and leave me a comment, and I'll try to answer your questions. In the meantime, please consider subscribing, liking, ring the little bell, and look at Patreon and PayPal.me so that I can do more of this stuff for you. Have a good one.